Hi, my name's Jordan Marshall and I'm Special Projects Editor at Building Magazine. I'm delighted to be hosting another session at Digital Building Week this week, which so far has been a great success. If you have missed out on any of our sessions, they're all available on demand. But the one that's coming up now is one that I've really been looking forward to all week. It's entitled, How Will AI Influence Different Parts of the Construction and Built Environment Supply Chain? It's particularly topical at the moment, and we've got a great panel for you who I'd love to introduce now. We have Noam Nave, CEO at Stylid, Ma Dalmakiro, Global Innovation Director at Arcadis, and Anna Maddock, Director of Digital Development at Scott Brownrigg. Just a little bit of housekeeping from me before I hand over to my much more knowledgeable panelists. So the way today's going to work is that each of our panelists is going to provide a presentation on the topic, outline their thoughts, and then there'll be a facilitated Q&A led by me in the second half of the session. To all of our attendees, please send through questions at any time. We'll try and cover off as many of those as we can. But yeah, send them through as they occur to you, and we'll get them into the Q&A. I think that's about it. Oh, except just wanted to flag that we do have this available on demand from about 60 minutes after the conclusion. So if anything particularly interesting comes up that you want to share with a colleague, please feel free to do that. Or if you just want to revisit or check anything, that's also completely fine. It'll be the same link you joined by today. That's probably enough for me to start things off. And first of all, I'm going to hand over to Ma, who's going to kick things off for us.
Thank you, Jordan. I'll start sharing. Hopefully everybody can see that. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Martha Macaro. I'm the Global Innovation and Management Director at Arcadis, and really excited to be joining today's webinar on this super relevant topic. So I have a background in civil engineering, but I have spent the past 4 years working in the exciting fields of innovation and more recently AI. So today I'll be sharing some of my experiences and perspectives in this field. First, a quick introduction about where I work. Arcadis is a global company that delivers sustainable design, engineering, digital and consultancy solutions for the natural and built environment. We are more than 36,000 professionals globally, all very much driven by our passion for improving quality of life. We exist to find solutions to today's most pressing challenges, from the impact of climate change to increasing urbanization and digital transformation, including the impact of emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. Now, when I talk about AI, I like to start thinking about what's happening today as a new wave. AI developments have been really, really impressive over the past decades. But in the last year, we have experienced something slightly different, this new wave. And that's mainly because generative AI has become mainstream. Now, most of us would have had ChatGPT as our door into this new form of AI, or more specifically into the concept of large language models. And here on screen, you can see an example in which I asked this chatbot about the core question that we're addressing today. How will AI influence different parts of the supply chain? So large language models are not the only revolutionary side of generative AI, even though they are the ones that more people are familiar with. But there is so much more than just text. To me, one of the most impressive things that I have observed is the development of image and even video generation, especially in what it relates to the engineering and design films. This architectural image has been designed using Midjourney, a famous tool for AI-generated images, and it starts giving us a glimpse into what a person could visualize, but to me, even further, how an architect or a designer could add their expertise into truly reimagining the built environment. So with some of these developments, we wonder, what is the impact? What would be different in the industry with the mainstream adoption of AI? And I'd like to share with you some examples. So here's our first examples. We have Ken, who is a senior consultant exploring how new technologies, immersive technologies, can support building design, a field that he's an expert in. And now with the help of ChatGPT, we will see how we can empower someone like Ken to add some new technologies into his toolkit and his expertise. So here it's kind of a faster video of what happened. We ask certain questions, and you see that ChatGPT starts responding around different tools, different emerging technologies that he could start using. Sorry, I see the video has stopped. So things like virtual reality, augmented reality, on how to integrate it with BIM. Now, you can continue that conversation for everyone in the call familiar with ChatGPT, and now go more specifically into saying, my client actually has more sustainability goals around design. So give me some more tangible examples of how using augmented reality could help. So again, we continue that conversation. You'll find a lot of detailed examples and a lot of just great creativity that you can get from such a tool. Once again, final example, you can include 2 more things. You can see that ChatGPT has that memory that remembers the context that we have already given to it. And text, as I mentioned, is not the only cool thing that we see for engineers and architects. And I think that the field of generative design was a little bit forgotten for some time. I think some of the people that started talking about generative design have definitely seen the potential for a long time. But I think, although it might have become old news for some of us, I believe it will start to become more and more relevant because of the advances in generative AI. This great idea that through providing the design goals, the constraints, and certain inputs, we can generate many more possibilities than one human could possibly think of that meet the criteria, but then very importantly, add that human layer that makes the decision of what makes sense and providing that context of the real world. So you can see here some of the trend already showing itself. This is about professionals using AI to do a better job, and it's not about being replaced by the technology to do the job for you. But of course, engineers and architects are not the only ones impacted. In fact, project management, with all the different disciplines around it, is an area with high disruption potential for the introduction and the application of AI. So here I want to show another example. It's specific to the field of contract management. And in this example, again, using an available tool like ChatGPT, we will create a table to compare different construction contracts that are used in the UK. So once again, I'm giving the tool the feedback and the context of what I want. And in this case, I specify a bit more how I want my output. So you see how so quickly it creates this table, and it understands the concept of comparison. So it doesn't compare the same contract in each of the rows and the columns. So very high level, this is an example of how someone perhaps new to the industry could do this and summarize and learn about different types of contracts without too much of the detail in just a few seconds, rather than having to read through all of them. Sorry, skip this one. I wanted to share last example, the field of facilities and building management, which is also being disrupted by AI. And for some time, we have seen IoT devices being installed in buildings, turning them into what we call smart buildings. But AI will add another layer on top of that will allow this field to further evolve and require less human supervision. So think about what would happen when we connect these sensors and these devices into an intelligent model that can perform actions on our behalf, and all the implications that this will have for occupancy, to manage a building, for sustainability and energy requirements, etc. And lastly, I want to close by talking about the inevitable impacts that AI will have in our industry. First, through the growth of generative AI in our market, as you can see here, is very much an upward trend. with a predicted exponential growth. And this means that we will need to catch up really, really fast with the technology so that we can manage it responsibly and ethically. I'm pretty sure that most people have heard about some of the challenges that we are facing and will be facing in the future, with especially with generative AI. And it is because it's such an unknown what happens kind of behind the scene as in that black box, that until regulation and policy catches up with the technology, we just have to make sure that as an industry we're managing that in a responsible way. And AI is also introducing the need to upskill and reskill professionals. And I truly believe that this is a critical part of getting the job done around adoption, especially when we introduce the fear that AI will be displacing jobs. I think as an industry, we have an opportunity to show our peers how we can instead improve the human AI collaboration and design the professions of the future, which will be no doubt powered by AI. And lastly, ending on a positive note, this is an exercise that I run often with people in our industry, and it's that when we see those 4 words on screen, most people probably associate them with the different challenges that we face, and I'm pretty sure that many of you will have also made that association. But because we want to turn this into something positive, I believe that with AI we have an opportunity to turn them into really good things like boosting productivity, better managing and sharing knowledge, augmenting talent very specifically, not replacing it, and speeding up the technology adoption. I think this will not only impact AI, but other technologies around it. With that, give it back to you, Jordan.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mara. I think that was such a beneficial opener that covered so much ground there. I've already got so many questions for you. But before we get to that, I'm going to hand over to Noam, if you're there, if you could share your slides. I'd love to hear your points of view next.
Will do. Thanks very much. Let me try and share it. Is it now on?
Perfect.
Right, cool. I'll make this full on. So my name is Noam. I'm the CEO of a UK startup called Stylab, and this is a What AI Means for talk I've curated together with my business partner, Fabio. Just before we get started, I'll say that I am doing this call today from Tel Aviv, and there are sirens every now and then. So if there is one, you'll have to excuse me, and I'll depart, and we'll catch up on some other time. So apologies. Hope everything goes well. In this quick talk, we wanted to talk about why, what, and how. So why is AI actually happening? What's the motivation behind that? What is going on? What AI is able to do for us? And how is it actually doing all of this? And what we should all be looking at in our organizations. So I'll start with the motivation part. This is a graph that talks about productivity in the construction sector in the US. And shockingly, you can see that the productivity not only has not been growing since the 1950s, it's been declining. And this is, so again, the red is the value added per full-time employee in construction in the US, and in blue is the general economy. Now, this graph is titled The Strange and Awful Path of Productivity in the US Construction Center, mainly because of this graph. So this describes the number of employees in the very same industry. And there is a clear correlation between the more employees that we actually take, the less productive this industry becomes. Now, one of the main key performance indicators for productivity is digitalization. And this is a McKinsey report, which is slightly outdated. I think it's 2017 now, that talks about digitalization in different sectors. And just look at the bottom of the graph. Construction is second from the bottom, just after agriculture. We think it's a real explainer about what's going on. We're looking at a very analog industry with very manual processes. But for us, it was interesting to look at the way that McKinsey chose to look at the different industries. And they analyze it in terms of assets on the top left, usage, and then labor. And we try to really look at our industry from that perspective. And I'll try to give a few words and an example on each. We're going to start with assets, which in our industry are very complex and very diverse. An asset can be I don't know, a cooling unit, but it can also be a brick. I mean, all of these processes, all of these assets are very data rich and they require rich specializations. Now you take these assets and you put them into use, and that use is versatile. So the same component exactly can be put in very, very different contexts and has to interrelate with other complex assets, adding, again, more complexity to the situation. And just to make things more interesting, so labor is still mainly manual in our industry. Manual due to uniqueness, and it's also showing low scalability. So it's not like you can design something and you can scale it up and build it again and again. These experiments have failed in the most part. But if this is all a bit abstract, I'm going to try to give an example, and we're going to look at a brick. So the drawing on the left shows basically how a brick is produced, from query to process to storage to kiln and burning, and then stocking it and delivery. So a lot of complexity already just for a single brick product. And the image on the right is a spec sheet coming from Travis Perkins. So just look how much information we have for that single brick. This is not news for anyone here. Now that brick can be put into a lot of different uses, walls, foundations, chimneys, roadworks, and probably the listeners can put many more examples. I've specified all of these in my career. But the point to make here is how complex such a simple asset can become. It's put in the context of other assets which are also complex, and they require a lot of specializations. This implies manual work and unscalability. And finally, who is actually performing all of this work? And we're looking at manual design just to be able to build anything still amongst architects, interior designers, but also consultants. And of course, manual construction. If you've ever seen someone putting a brick wall together, it's fascinating and beautiful, and at the same time depressing and incredibly time consuming. Now, to put all of these slides and the story of a brick in context of AI, we wanted to look at the definition of what AI actually is. There are many better definitions than this one, but in the context of this call, we said it might be something like a set of digital techniques that enable machines to execute tasks that typically require human intelligence. And if we take that definition and look at the flow that we've just looked at the very complex asset, the versatile usage, and at the extremely manual labor, you would see the financial need of machines that can actually carry out jobs that are being done today by human or require human intelligence. And there is therefore no wonder that we see a lot of graphs like this. So this is trying to describe global AI construction forecast by market size. We're in 2022, this is roughly $2.5 billion. And we're expecting to see ×8, something like that, growth over the next 10 years, which is anything but a surprise. So we talked about the motivation for AI, but let's talk about what AI is actually doing for us. And we'd like to very quickly review optimization processes, automation processes, and creation processes. Now, my background is in architecture and design, so I'm going to bring a lot of examples from that one. The first one is from Christian Derricks, Lucy Helm, and Asmund Isaac. Christian Derricks is one of the global pioneers in computational design. And this is a very outdated project that we've intentionally chose to bring you just to show if that happened 15 years ago, just imagine what can be done today. In this project, what the Derricks team tried to do is create an algorithm for a competition that's trying to build a vertical tower with a lot of 3D prototypes for flats. So you can see these small building blocks in the diagram below. Now, they very quickly came to realize that there are endless combinations for flat, and it was impossible for a designer to try and solve this 3D Tetris. So they built a small neural network that tried to solve all of this together, very early machine learning or AI, if you want, examples. And what this process did is to optimize the floor plan in each and every floor almost to an optimum. I think they didn't win the competition, by the way. A second example, which is much more recent, from Foster and Partners, probably the global leader in implementing AI in design environments. What they've done in this process, they've looked at floor plans on the top row, and then they've used neural networks to provide a spatial and visual connectivity analysis in the second row and then the third row to bring to optimization. So they were able to see this layout has better connectivity and that layout has better visual connectivity. And they've then moved through a process of changing the floor plans until they've reached a point where they were happy with the results that they were getting. So AI, in a sense, is also optimizing our work. Now let's talk about automation. This is an example from an Israeli startup called Swap. Swap has put himself a goal of automating construction documentation. And what their technology allows companies today to do, mainly architects and in-house developers for contractor side, is to take massings and very quickly, in a click of a button, to turn them to very, very detailed construction drawings. So designers don't need to actually open the BIM and bring in those details and drag in the components. It all happens in a click in relatively flexible and dynamic construction environment. I suggest really to follow up on them. Another example, which is a bit more abstract, this is the thesis work from Stan, who is the CEO of a startup called Rayon.ai. In his thesis work, he worked on something called Archigen. This is a generative AI for floor plans. So basically what Stan did, he showed the neural network many images of floor plans, and he teach them how to adapt any outline of any floor plan into something rational, something that makes sense, something efficient. And he created these lovely animations just to show what it is. Again, another startup worth following. So we talked about optimization, we talked about automation, but let's talk about creation. Again, I'm coming from a design and creative background, and this is kind of our holy grail and in much respect our unique sales points as architects. And I want to start this kind of couple of slides with a quote from Peter Bentley. Peter is a professor in UCL in London, and he did a lot of work around what machines can do to create better designs. And in this text, he calls 10 steps to make a perfect creative evolutionary design systems. He talks about the principles that we all have to follow. Now, what's fascinating about this text, it's almost 25 years old, but now we're starting to actually see examples that are delivering on these messages. So this is an example from a company called Spacemaker. Spacemaker were sold to Autodesk last year for, I think, about $250 million. They created a generative AI for urban and block scale design. So that basically means you give them a plot, and they know how to draw in all the relevant legislation and ask you for what parameters you're interested in, if it's quality of life, if it's diversity, if it's intensity and denseness, and they provide you with thousands and thousands of product options. So a really interesting tool that shows you how design can actually complement creative processes that traditionally an entire design team would be spending many hours on. Another example that Mar was talking about before is obviously around what's happening with prompt-based image generation. These are images from Midjourney. And I think we ain't seen nothing in that context yet. So today you're able to start having a conversation and create a single image, but I wouldn't be surprised if in 4 or 5 years' time, the entire rendering process, as we know it, is going to completely be done using these means, and we won't be creating models and try to render them for many hours anymore. So imagine a situation, you talk to a computer, and while you're talking, the image is changing, and you can change each and every detail. And this verticalization is something that we're seeing in other industries, and we're going to see very soon in our industry as well. Generative AI has an incredible adoption curve. It's shown here in red, and we're seeing it's almost the same as tablets and much more than smartphones were. That means that there is a huge demand for it. And again, another proof that we're going to see a lot more of these tools and a lot more investment. And the last thing that we'd like to talk about is how is this all working? So what's actually moving all of this AI kind of processes or take over the world, if you want. And I'll start by quoting from Marta Ticari. Marta is I think a senior director today for Foster & Partners, and she was my mentor when I was in UCL. She's, again, a complete pioneer when it comes to computational design, and she's talking a lot about the importance of data. And this quote, data has become the currency of modern society. And she's talking in a very recent text about how essential it is for organizations, if huge or small like we are, to create quality data and create processes that are based on it. Now, in our sector, there are many almost hidden data sets. If it's BIM models, but also, which is a classic data set, but also contracts, estimates, specifications, design drawings, product information, and many, many more, which consultants in this call can probably talk about. And we chose to bring a couple of examples of what people are doing with these different data sets in the industry. First is again, an Israeli startup called Firmus. Firmus are processing design drawings. If it's CAD drawings, BIM models, PDFs, you name it, they process it. And they have an algorithm that helps contractors to anticipate, to forecast errors and missing information before they even go on site. So we've all been there, we all went to site, and then the contractor starts sending RFIs, this is missing, this doesn't work, etc., etc. And they're trying to completely solve the situation. So when a contractor gets on site, and obviously the project cost is then increasing exponentially, they're not facing any problems, and they can streamline the entire construction run. Another very famous, of course, example from Procore, one of the leading solution providers for main contractors. What they do is they take reports and estimates and Gantt charts and analysis around how much time is being spent to do any sort of work. And they provide not only with current project analysis, but also with future forecasts of how the project is going to run and where the contractor might find difficulties. And then I'll bring a quick example about what we at Stylib do. So we deal a lot with data that's coming from suppliers and manufacturers. Very typically is the two data sets that you're seeing. So for example, a catalog, a PDF catalog with imagery, and that's hard to capture, and a lot of text that's difficult to understand. At the same time, with Excel sheets, if we're lucky, that has a lot of information that's very, very difficult to process. And that means that they are struggling to get to architects with their process, with their products, and architects are struggling to understand what their products has to offer. What our team is then doing, they are standardizing all of this information, and they are enriching it, and they're creating access and governance to it using machine learning and data science pipelines that we've built in-house. And the point is to create a very dynamic database that then allows different applications to connect to it. If it's image search, analysis, much more simple data access, improved searchability, maintenance, etc. And if this is a bit abstract, so there's a quick clip here that shows you exactly one of the implications. So in Stylib.com today, designers can drag and drop any image, and what we do use machine learning or AI to cross-reference it to products coming from leading trade suppliers, just like you would with Google Lens. So designers can come up with an inspiration image and tell us, this is roughly the style I'm after, but I only want to see, for example, laminate and vinyl, like in the example that you're showing. And in a couple of clips, we get them to relevant products. We do this with anything from fabric to timber to laminates to bricks, tiles, of course, etc. So we're really trying to streamline architects' work and support their routine workflows. But we're not here to talk about Stylib, Jordan tells me. So I'll get onto the last couple of slides. Very much like Mar, one is a negative and one is a bit more optimist. Huge question about our jobs. And I think that this event around the Writers Guild of America strike almost went under radar, unrightfully for our industry. These guys went on strike mainly because, well, a lot because AI was taking their jobs and replacing them, and they were seeing this happening in front of their eyes. And I'm reminding everyone again how verticalizable, if that's a word in English, or how verticalized this workflows and technologies can be made. And don't be surprised to seeing algorithms doing routine tasks that you're currently engaged with. And I completely agree with Mar about the need for designers, consultants, architects, anyone in the sector to become specialists in operating these tools. And last is a graph from Tim Urban, whose profile on Twitter I really recommend following. And Tim is talking about human progress through time in green, and that we haven't seen nothing yet, and we're going to see incredible changes and deltas over the next decade. I don't know if this progress is going to be positive or negative, but it's surely to come, and we're all going to witness it. That's it. Check us out on Stylib.com, and thank you, Jordan, for inviting me for this call.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Noam. I think it was another great presentation, so insightful. Covered so much ground already. I'm very keen to get into the Q&A section. So Anna, can I ask you to share your thoughts, and then we'll get onto the panel discussion?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. And what fantastic two presentations to follow. I hope I'm not going to repeat too much. Some of the slides might resonate in a similar way, but I will try and bring a kind of different point of view, if possible, as an architect. So hi there. I'm Anna Matic. I'm a digital development lead at Scott Brewerig. My remit is projects mostly, so I work actively on designing and delivering projects, but also the kind of plethora of design tools that we're using, especially digital tools, and how we implement them in our work, but also how the hell we're going to survive the next the next several years of development. Are the slides coming through fine? I think it looks good.
Yep, they're perfect.
Thank you. So I'm not going to repeat too much about the overall kind of spread of AI, but here's a very useful kind of cheat sheet from a colleague of mine on LinkedIn, and also something I learned very recently or picked up recently at an AI summit. Basically, the first leap we made as humans with AI is basically teaching it language, then languages, and then the second leap that's just happening at the moment is language to image and video and BIM, which will start happening even more exponentially in the next few years. And then who knows exactly where Noam left the presentation just before is what is the leap 3. We don't actually know, and we probably will have to catch up very quickly as it's happening. But I think the things to remember is that as AI is learning in the background, also we are learning a new language. So we're learning to work with AI, and I think there will be massive changes. But also, I think humans are incredibly resourceful. So as the AI is developing, we're developing as well. Also, we'll be developing different ways of actually cross-breeding from AI into real world and so forth. So the most obvious development at the moment, everyone touched on this already, is the sort of image generation AI. There is a lot of it out there. Keep your eyes peeled to different apps and things. Some are brilliant, some are a little bit basic. The concept of dreaming up an image and being able to instantly kind of create at least a sort of conceptual level a sort of delivery is great. However, it does have its limitations, and I think projects tend to be a lot more about understanding the context and being able to respond to that. So AI is not quite there, and that's quite nice. That's kind of refreshing, I think. We are testing AI a lot in our projects to create images like this. They are sort of simple presentational images to demonstrate a mood of a setting or the light, the building, or so not to necessarily show architecture. We are trying to show a sort of an inspiration of a place. For this, AI is brilliant. Once you start to know what your project is and how your geometry works, AI starts falling over a little bit. That's not to say that it's going to improve, but right now we're not using it for that. So we're using it for kind of dreaming the concepts and giving us sort of inspirational images to our clients. We're also using it in cases like this, where we may want a specific image of a specific place, but that image we either don't have the right to use it from the web, or we just don't have it to hand. So you can actually speak to Midjourney and create a kind of inspirational image of a place, which you then don't have any issues kind of sharing. And there is a lot of this as well, which is kind of experimenting with facades, skin design, and sort of coming up with, again, inspirational images, but not necessarily full on design, because design is made up of many, many more layers of knowledge than just the kind of visual. I think both presenters already touched on generative AI. I actually think the generative AI hasn't really moved on as much as it could have. It's still very much where it was about 15 years ago. I mean, it's smarter, but it's also quite limited. We're using it a lot for things that we can predict. Frankly, give me a good architect, sit them down for 2 minutes, and they'll actually probably come up with very good options that, you know, AI would come up with 200 options, and then you still have to come down to the 2. So I don't know. I'm also a little bit nervous about handing over to AI all the cool things we want to do, and actually not handing over the really tedious, boring jobs like checking hundreds of subcontractor drawings and stuff like that. There are now experiments of kind of speaking into BIM and generating sort of predictable sector type designs, so you can train your AI to know what a standard office development needs comparing to university building or whatever. All of this is really valid. Again, I don't think we need to worry too much about this kind of creating joblessness among us architects, because again, projects are very complex and we need to respond to a lot of different parameters when we are designing. A little bit about wider kind of wider influence of what's going on in specifically asset management, but also kind of connectivity between digital twins. Obviously, we all already use digital twins, even if we don't call them that. Whenever you check when your bus is coming, you're using a digital twin. Digital twin in buildings are starting to become more common. We are working on a few. Airports are using them widely. It's not so new, but it will start becoming a wider ecosystem of digital twins. So there will be opportunities to standardize some of the exchange of data, and there will be opportunities to use them for kind of extreme situation like floods and critical response to environmental issues. We are, as part of our practice, we actually have a digital twin unit, and we are developing kind of use cases for digital twin, mostly within kind of commercial and education and healthcare. There are many uses, and I think this is an area where digital twin is going to become a very not just popular, but I think needed in order to be able to achieve zero carbon and provide good workplace strategies and save energy. There is a much bigger push to actually try and control the energy use within construction industry and also within the kind of newly handed over buildings. We work on advanced technology sector a lot, so we work on data centers. They are energy hungry, and kind of in introducing and in-building AI machine learning into them is absolutely essential in order to reduce reduce the carbon, but also just simply the energy use. One thing to mention about AI is that we are all still in a kind of romantic part of our relationship with the digital world, because we imagine digital stuff to be sort of slightly ephemeral and living in the cloud. Sadly, the cloud is not a cloud, and is actually housed in incredibly large buildings that take incredible amount of energy, both for kind of running the servers, but then also for cooling of the servers and also water. So this is actually, we're still on the up, but at some point we are going to have to start kind of clearing out and becoming less intense about using data and sort of gathering data. when that starts happening, we're going to have to start having different strategies in terms of where the digital data is kept. I'm not going to go too much into this, but there are some ethical questions, and I think we need to try and learn to build smarter, to maybe diversify and have smaller data centers which are closer to the community, so that the heat exchange can be implemented. But this needs to be legislated, basically, and this needs to be looked at on a kind of world scale and government scale. The problem is that all of the digital stuff that we are using and all of the infrastructure is actually privately owned. So we're yet to find out how this is going to be happening. And to finish on a positive, I think on a kind of more creative and more beautiful side of things, the AI manufacturing will allow us to produce fantastic new materials, also incredible new geometric and sort of visual experiences. So that is yet to be explored, and I think this is the bit that I would really love to focus on if we ever had a choice. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Anna. That was another great presentation. I'm in awe of all of your expertise. If ever I could ask all our speakers to pop their screens back on and unmute themselves, then we can jump into the Q&A. Brill. Okay, so... Ooh. So the first question I really wanted to pick up with you is, one of the words that I heard, the sorts of words I heard from you guys a lot, was along the lines of enhancement, optimization, and augmentation. So in terms of improving and building upon what's already there. I guess one of my big questions, and I know, Noam, you had a whole section dedicated to the how, but how can firms make sure they aren't just approaching AI as something novel and something new, which they should be doing, and making sure their applications of it are actually enhancing and improving the outputs they're looking to make?
How should I approach this? The companies should be employing young people. It's as simple as that. One of the biggest challenges that we have, I'll tackle this from a completely different approach. One of the biggest challenges that we have is that we are dealing with companies which are very traditional conservatives, and that's manufacturers and suppliers for architectural products. And we find that the companies which are more open towards technology are ones that are actually employing younger people that are see how technology is impacting other aspects of their lives in key roles. Specifically for us, that means product managers, sales managers, marketing managers. And we genuinely believe that these are the companies that are going to prosper and see success over the next 10 years. We need to understand that, even for our generation, we are completely outdated, and that younger people already understand much better than us what can be done, because their ability to reference is much higher than us. So I think that that's a real key for any organization, big or small. Just talk to young people, understand what's going on, ask them about it. That's the advice I'd be able to give.
Brilliant. Mark, Anna, did either of you have any other thoughts that you wanted to come in with there? How can people actually make sure? Yeah, Mark, go for it. So you unmute yourself.
I would build on that. I think it's this concept of, I agree with Noam on the younger people, and that newer generations are experiencing technology in a very different way, because it's just part of how they do work. It's not a new thing anymore. I do think that there is a place for the traditional and experienced people when you pair them with the more technologically, digitally savvy. And it's, again, that concept of reverse mentoring, in which they all have things to learn from each other, which hasn't been the case traditionally. So traditionally, the early career professional learns from the very senior expert. And now I think we need to close that loop in which everyone can learn from each other. And there are many things, especially on the technology front, that people can learn. You also ask about how we can make sure that, it's not just about the new, almost like the new shiny thing, if I interpret it, and that we're actually choosing to apply the technology to optimize and really enhance. And this is, I think it will become a common challenge, because identifying the use cases, especially for technologies that are not so well known, I would almost call it the most difficult part. The technology is there. Our type of organizations won't be inventing that kind of technology, but the value lies in the application and finding where exactly can you apply it and how to maximize that value is the biggest challenge that we have at the moment.
Absolutely. Anna, did you have anything else you wanted to bring in there?
Again, I'm probably going to, I'm not on mute, am I? I'm probably going to sound a little bit less optimistic or slightly more reticent, but I think at the moment we're creating so much technology that actually we are also by solving lots and lots of problems, we're solving problems that we don't need to be solving, as well as the problems that we should be solving. So that point about finding which use cases are actually important is really essential. The other side of this is that actually at some point things will survive, like the important things will survive and the rest will start kind of falling to the to the bottom, and I think that we haven't really arrived there yet, but I think that I'm really looking forward to that moment when we actually have a little bit more kind of clear understanding of which bits we really have to be doing and which bits we don't. I agree with you about young people, but actually I think we should also be encouraging a very experienced people to use the new technology, because actually experienced people know exactly how to do stuff. I think we mustn't lose the track of the fact that actually humans are incredibly intelligent. So I think I always say to everyone, we should be bookending AI. So you know, put yourself in, use a bit of AI, get yourself to use yourself to get the stuff out. Don't allow AI just to be the thing, because actually it's not fun either.
Brilliant. Okay, so actually that sort of brings me to another question that I had come up with listening to you all speak, which was along the lines of I know, Ma, you mentioned reskilling and that sort of thing, but one of the things I wanted to ask is, does the appropriate and beneficial use of AI, regardless of specialism, require broader digital competency across the sector, and how can we actually facilitate this? Because there's traditionally an issue in the sector with significant change.
Fully agree. I think the answer is it depends, which is a very, very easy answer from my side. But I think there is a place for everyone. And what I've seen and what I call it, some of the reasons why I call it a new wave is because tools like ChatGPT that enable for someone to interact with artificial intelligence, an incredibly complex technology, in just by using human language without the need for understanding what's happening behind, has lowered the barrier for adoption to an extent that I don't think we're able to grasp today. Now, that doesn't mean that's so the concept of prompt engineering, and again, it's fully based on natural language, on the way we speak. You might add your architectural expertise, your understanding of how the lighting will hit a building, etc., and different parts of your specialism. But at the end of the day, it's just our natural language. The part where it will require digital skills and where I would expect to see a talent shortage is in the more technical roles that around data management, data engineering, AI, machine learning engineers. So I do not expect for the full workforce to become suddenly a machine learning engineer. Again, incredibly complex profession. I do think that people will fall on a spectrum of kind of the basic AI savvy that can just interact with the system versus the one that truly understand what's going on behind in that black box. So I don't think we should look at it from a scary perspective, and that I think from an optimistic point of view, I think it gives you such a broad spectrum to upskill yourself to continue to grow while providing value from the very beginning, from the very basic level, which is what, again, this new wave of Gen AI has enabled us to do.
Brilliant. Noam, Anna, did either of you want to come in on that?
I would, reiterate what Mar is saying. All of these applications that we're seeing are intentionally designed as stupid-proof. They are trying to make it, whether it's for professionals or even for, basic users, then trying to make it impossible not to understand how to use them. And that's where these applications are so successful. I do think, however, that before we know it, it's only just getting started, and Anna was talked about it quite in length. Before we know it, there's going to be a clear advantage to people who know how to manipulate these tools to their needs. You know, I'm having conversations with younger people, students for architecture, which are now in university, and this is one of my messaging to them: stay on top of this trend if you want to be relevant in the future market of employment.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. There's going to be a lot of space still for decision makers and people that know what to do with these technologies. Mara and Anna both talked about it, understanding what the use case is, how it can be employed efficiently. But young people need to be on top of it to remain productive, as simple as that. Because imagine a situation where you have one designer coming up with 2 alternatives and another coming with, you know, 6 and 10 alternatives, which makes more sense. You know, there isn't really much of a competition there. So younger professionals really need to be careful from that situation.
Brilliant. Anna, did you have anything you wanted to bring in?
I just wanted to say I love Noah's experiment with the brick or the study of the brick. But if we imagine that on a much bigger scale, so the one of the very, very important current trends is to actually try and keep on top of the embodied carbon that is going into the building. So we are tracking all of our projects right from the start, you know, through the development of the project. Actually calculating carbon for the building is incredibly complex. There is no AI to help with this at the moment. And the problem isn't that you can't crunch the data, it's that the data is actually unreliable. And I think that point is so important. It's like, it's not just about having fantastic AI, it's about having very fantastically reliable data that is actually contextual, so that you know, if you're building in Finland, the data is relevant to Finland, and if you're building in Stevenage, the data is relevant to Stevenage. What I'm trying to say is the world is complex, and the brick example illustrates that perfectly, and which is why we can't actually shortcut everything. That we can shortcut some things, and other things we still need to do properly, and maybe with the help of tiny bit of AI sort of speeding us up, which is why I guess for the younger generations, I think keep on top of it, but also keep learning the real trade, because the real trade is not going to disappear. It might get speeded up in places, but it's going to stay, and I think that's positive as well.
Well, I do have a question from the audience, because thus far I've been selfish and just been asking my own questions that I came up with while you guys were speaking. And I think I might be able to guess your answer to this, Anna, based off that answer. But I've had a question come through that says, do any of you envisage a world where AI is smart enough to be able to fully design up to and including stage 5? Or will we always require human management at the very least to review at various gateways? Anna, would you like to go first?
I think you can guess my answer. I think construction, not just architects, but you know, everyone involved in construction, is all about problem solving. You only have to try and build a back extension to your house, and you will realize how messy and complex things are. I think that it's not going to disappear. We're dealing with real things that have weight, they're messy, that, you know, fall apart and, you know, don't come together in a junction. I think I don't see, at least in the near future, an AI that will be completing your whole design. And one other point on that subject is that I work with so many digital tools, and I always first meet the people, and then I try and work out the tools. People are so important. It doesn't matter what tools you have. You're never going to build anything unless you make connections with everyone on the team and you have a good team on board. I also don't think that's going to be replaced by AI. So keep studying.
I can make a comment about the size of the resource that's required to get to, let's say, stage 5. And I think that's going to shrink substantially. And I think that we're going to see that the timeframes, especially for projects which are roughly similar, let's say, I don't know, rather conservative residential blocks as we would see them today, which is essentially a recipe. We see most of the design work today for these buildings is being done at the urban stage and then at the envelope stage. We're going to see these processes speeding up incredibly. I think we're already starting to see it with some of the tools out there. So it's, you will need a director and you will need someone to actually go out and execute all of this, but the size of the team is going to be drastically reduced.
What about you?
Here, even though I try to be incredibly optimistic, I think my easy answer is yes, I do envision a future in which that happens, but it's nowhere near us. So I don't think I truly do. I truly envision that not in my lifetime. I think in the future, so many things could happen and AI could reach a level that, again, none of us could explain today. I don't think we are anywhere close to that, like big concept, artificial general intelligence and all of that. So I lean more towards, Anna's view of the world, very much led by humans, but also agree with Noam in terms of the resources, which I don't think it's a bad thing, because the skill shortage before, this whole AI revolution was very real, is still very real. So the fact that we will be able to replace stages or activities under the stages by technology because they are mundane and they are repetitive and they are repeatable, and easier for a computer to do. Yes, I do envision very near, actually, a future in which that happens. As Anna says, the sitting down with a person, the empathy of, do you really need a building? Is that what you want? That's a question, that you cannot ask about. You can ask how, you can give it characteristics and ask it to design something, but the why behind a lot of the reason why the industry exists, I think that's still very much a human element. So not anywhere near us.
Brilliant. And that also sort of answered another question that I had about the role of AI and sort of redressing the skills crisis, is that perhaps by taking out some of those repeatable tasks and that sort of thing, it can help alleviate some of the pressure at certain parts of the supply chain, unless I'm interpreting incorrectly there from you guys.
Yeah, I would have a question for Anna. I don't know if that's in the rules.
You're allowed. I'll allow it.
One of the trends we're seeing with all these new applications, because they're trying to make it much easier for anyone to do anything. Even my own company is trying to make something that's a very traditional architect's interior design task and make it as simple as dropping an image and filtering some products. So we're almost seeing kind of a transition in who can do what scope of the design process.
Yeah.
We're seeing more and more kind of authorities or abilities moving from the classic designer to the developer almost. And I wanted to ask Mar and Anna if this is something that they're seeing and if they're concerned about it. I mean, obviously you're dealing a bit more with classic design processes.
I can take that. We are seeing two things, which is that, as you say, that sort of director and part one kind of symbiology works really well, because you can pretty much do everything in terms of early stage design with quite small teams. It's not, in my view, it's not a positive thing. I mean, we should have enough resource. We're struggling with resource, but I think such is the world. That's how the market is driving things. However, in the later stages, in the production side of things, so from stage 4 onwards, it is very, very hard at the moment to automate everything. Either you're simply dealing with a lot of regulation, with a lot of, the stuff you're needing to respond to and then solve a problem is so multi-layered that just issuing drawings is a tiny part of our work. Negotiating with people, dealing with difficult planning authorities, that sort of outward agency of the architect it remains, and therefore those teams are still in kind of in good size. In terms of kind of architects as developers, I don't actually know. I think this is going to be very regional and very very sector specific as well. I think resi sector is quite predictable. Student living, hotels, that kind of stuff. But but less obvious sectors that involve industry and transport are still very complex. You're working as a part of a massive ecosystem of engineers and project managers and stuff. So it's not that easy to kind of it's not easy to predict what's going to happen. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say.
Marta, did you have anything you wanted to add on that one?
I would just say really resonate with what Anna shared. I think the complexity of some of the phases and very much the ecosystem of players involved, that like with new entrants, etc., and like with technology, adding another like layer to that. I think it's that much more complex environment that we'll be dealing with in the future.
Brilliant. Well, that hour has absolutely flown by. I don't know where the time went. I'd love to thank our panelists, Mar, Noam, and Anna, for their expertise. I'd also love to thank our audience for joining today and for sending your questions through. We really appreciate your participation. I'd just like to flag before I say goodbye that we have 2 more sessions for Digital Building Week running tomorrow. They are all about building safety and digital applications to support the Golden Thread and broader building safety delivery. So make sure to check those out. And I also will just mention that Noam mentioned Martha Sakari during his presentation. Martha actually gave a keynote at our conference late last month, which became available on demand this morning. So if you go to the Digital Building Week page, you'll be able to access that speech from Martha there as well. So that's it for me for today. Thanks again to our speakers, and goodbye.
Lovely to meet you all. Thanks.